Hello, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, November 29th, 2022, and I'm here in the Cleveland National Forest on the upper slopes of Guatay Mountain near the town of Guatay. Today I want to present a special Spotlight on Trees video. Today's spotlight is on the Tecate Cypress. Here's the Tecate Cypress, Hesperocyparis forbesii, also often known as Cupressaceae forbesii. The Tecate Cypress is a usually large shrub to small, usually rounded crown in maturity. When young, can be a little more conical with upswept branches. It is a cypress, so it's a part of the Cypress family, the Cupressaceae. And this is a very rare treat to see if you see it in its natural habitat, because it is very, very scattered and very rare. And when I mean scattered, a few very widely scattered apart groves of this tree. So we are probably about 4,500 feet here on Guatay Mountain. A lot of times you'll see this well below that. Sometimes you'll see it as low as 1,800 feet. Sometimes maybe even a little lower in some spots. But I believe this is the highest elevation where this grows naturally. So, Tecate Cypress again. Large shrub to often small tree. Sometimes multi-trunk. This one has branches down towards near the base, but it does have a single trunk there. And Tecate Cypress ranges from Upper Coal Canyon, I believe maybe Fremont and Gypsum Canyons in far northern Orange County, south of the 91 freeway, below Sierra Peak in the Santa Ana Mountains. And it is found in a couple scattered groves here in San Diego County, including here on Guatay Mountain. Got a small population here. As you can see, these smaller, most of these dotting the hillside here are Tecate cypresses, except I think some of those might be canyon live oaks maybe. But we do have a few Tecate cypress trees growing along the north-facing slopes of this mountain. And I believe we're in some type of an ultramorphic soil. I believe this is some type of mophic soil, so they seem to do well in these areas. But then you also have a couple of other spots here in San Diego County, closer to the border. We're just a little bit north of Interstate 8, and we're south of Kuuchamaa Rancho State Park. And so a couple other places where you'll find this is along spots of Otay Mountain, which is near San Isidro. So you'll find populations of this on Otay Mountain, the Otay ridgeline. And you will also find this on Kuuchamaa, aka Tecate Peak, near the Tecate entrance to Mexico. So Tecate Peak also has population of this tree as well. So if you catch it in the wild, appreciate it. Enjoy that you're looking at something very rare. It's a very rare find here. This is one of our rare species. One of our very rare species of trees. And I believe it does like mophic soils because it does grow on the other mountains in populations of southern mountain misery, Camebatia australis, which I've yet to see. And that is usually a plant that prefers ultramorphic soils or volcanic origin. So I'm believing this area also has that, because I also see quite a bit of this creeping sage in those type of soils, and that's Salvia sonomensis, which is extremely common along the trail up to Guatay Mountain. So let's just appreciate this beautiful, beautiful tree. And then we got these cones, these small rounded cones, very typical of the cypress, the genus Cupressaceae and Hesperocyparis, rounded. And they do occasionally open, but for the most part, these trees keep their cones closed, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, sometimes usually waiting for fire. And fire is usually what'll open them all up. Now some of them will occasionally open over time, as you'll see a few cones here. You saw a couple here that were already partially opened up, but a lot of them will stay closed for many, many years. Sometimes sometimes you'll see some old persistent cones here on these dead branches here too. So the cones stay very well attached to the tree for a very long time, whether they open or not. So I'm going to back up. I did shoot video of this side of the tree during a hiking video set when I climbed up Guatay Mountain, which I'm returning from it now. Then I still have a ways to go. But I got video of this tree from the other side. But again, a lot of these pointier plants here, these are all Tecate cypresses, the ones that are a little more upright. That one over there appears to probably be a canyon live oak. But we got some Tecate cypress there, and then we have a couple downhill from here. Really not trying to go too far off trail. The trail up to Guatay Mountain is just probably about 20 yards over that way, because I'm trying to leave minimal impact, but you can step off the side of the trail as long as you're careful. And I'm just doing it here to feature this beautiful tree. So this tree used to be known back in the day as Hesperocyparis. Used to be Hesperocyparis or Cupressaceae guadalupensis variety or subspecies forbesii, as it is closely related to the Guadalupe Island cypress in Baja California, which is again Hesperocyparis guadalupensis. So this used to carry the name guadalupensis, subspecies of variety forbesii. The Guadalupe Island cypress, if I remember correctly, gets a little more height and more girth to it, I believe. It's a little bit taller. As Tecate cypresses themselves don't usually get much above 25 to 35 feet tall. Not very common for them to get even that tall to begin with. This one's probably about 15 to 25 feet tall, maybe about 20. And these cypress trees have this beautiful mottled bark, which is common with quite a few of our cypresses here in the southwestern United States. Relatively smooth, little bits of peeling here and there, and kind of a mottled color. It's beautiful. The bark is beautiful on this tree. Absolutely beautiful. And the tree has a delectably fragrant aroma. On hot days, that smell will carry. But sometimes if you rub the leaves, or if you have to bushwhack through lower portions of it to get somewhere, you're going to catch a very fragrant, Christmassy whiff of resin. These trees are quite resinous. Now, one thing though is a lot of cypress trees will have these little tiny dots on their little tiny scale-like leaves. So you see this portion from my thumb to the tip of the twig consists of several scale-like leaves that are usually kind of diamond shaped and overlapping. So that's why they look like they're completely covered, and you don't really see too much bare twig space until you get lower down to the older twigs. So one thing is, a lot of cypress trees will have these little tiny pinpoint little dots called resin dots or resin glands. And on a lot of cypress trees, they can be quite conspicuous and easy to see. However, on a lot of our species, they're not so conspicuous. So you really have to look very carefully at the foliage. Like I said, Tecate cypress does not have a gland dot on its scale-like leaves, so you won't be able to see the actual gland dot. But like I said, it does still have that wonderful cypress smell that carries on very warm days, and is especially prevalent if you brush up against it. And I'm just very gently rubbing my hands on the sprays of foliage, and I can smell it. And it smells really, really awesome. It is one of the most pleasant smells here in the chaparral. And that's its most typical habitat, is chaparral. As you see, we have various species of manzanita, common chamise, silk tassel, ceanothus, and lots of other beautiful species of chaparral shrubs. So that's where this plant is most at home. Rarely do they form very dense forests, except when fire comes through, burns them, and a bunch of saplings will come up. So we're talking about how fire opens the cones. Fire is the main method to get this tree to reproduce. So to reproduce, the fire A is hot enough to open all the cones. So unfortunately the tree will burn and die. The mature tree will die, but the seeds will be released into the ashen soil that's been cleared. So they will get minerals from the fire, and hopefully, since most of these fires occur during the autumn, late autumn and early winter months, there'll be rain during the mid to late part of the winter, or snow up here for that matter, that will provide enough soil moisture for crops of seedlings to come up the following spring. And I've seen evidence of years of that in the Santa Ana Mountains when I hiked up to Sierra Peak via Coal Canyon, and that's a mostly young population because that area has been burnt repeatedly since the early 2000s. So that area, when I went to hike Sierra Peak back in 2015, there were many young Tecate Cypress trees, and they were all small, usually anywhere from a foot to 5 feet tall, very narrow. They look kind of narrow when they're young, like a lot of conifers do. Of course, this is a conifer, a cone-bearing tree, as we've established by looking at the cones. But a lot of times you'll get dense stands of them, but then of course, you know, a lot of them won't get established. They'll perish during droughts, whereas the stronger ones will get their roots deep enough to get enough moisture to survive and carry on the species. So they're at their densest when they are a new forest or a new woodland. But when it's a mature stand, typically they're quite far apart. And as I said, they're quite far apart. So they make a very, very sparse woodland here in the middle of the chaparral. So fire is the way to get the cones open, clear all the shady underbrush, and put minerals in the soil for these wonderful trees to grow. Again, too frequent of a fire frequency, in other words, it burns when the new stand is just sapling stage, will cause them to not be able to grow cones and reproduce. They will not be allowed to have time to do that. And we've had a couple fires get pretty close to the Tecate cypresses in the Santa Ana Mountains in North Orange County. One back in 2017 called the Canyon 2 fire. It came really close to burning the sapling Tecate cypress. There are very few. There are some, but there are very few adult cone-bearing trees in that stand. When I went, it was 99% saplings. So if that area were to burn again, there would be very limited reproduction by some of the adult trees, because it takes, I believe it takes at least several years to probably decades, maybe a decade or two, maybe more, for these trees to be able to form their female cones, which bear the seeds. I think it might be around 20 to 30 years of age. I don't know 100%. I think that's the age that generally these trees become reproductive when they start getting more of these cones on them. But then again, you've got to take time to appreciate these absolutely outstandingly beautiful trees up here when you get to see them. I believe they might be available in cultivation. I can swear when I was a kid in San Diego that I went to this elementary school called Walt Whitman Elementary School, and there's a big wide perimeter fence where people's backyards are bordering the school campus. And I remember as a kid going to one of the corners at Whitman Elementary School, and that's in the Claremont neighborhood, by the way. And I remember seeing looked like a couple Tecate cypresses planted pretty close to the fence, and I was like, "Oh, these are Tecate cypresses." And I was maybe probably about 11 years old around that time, just when I was starting to learn about these trees. So I'm pretty sure I've seen them in cultivation. And you might be able to order seeds, but I would not go, personally, I would not go too crazy, because I don't know how limited the availability is. I don't know. I mean, I have to do some research to see how available this plant is in horticulture, but you might be able to buy it. You might be able to buy it in a nursery, or maybe be able to purchase the seeds somewhere. But there you go, the beautiful Tecate Cypress, Hesperocyparis forbesii, here in the beautiful Guatay Mountain area of Cleveland National Forest. So that will basically do it for my spotlight on trees. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed filming it because it gave me a chance to spotlight a very rare tree, and also to do my first spotlight in quite a while. It's been a few weeks. I think the only spotlight I've done this month of November was the Gooding's Black Willow in Shepherd Canyon in San Diego. But there you have it, the beautiful, beautiful Tecate Cypress, Hesperocyparis forbesii. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this video interesting and informative, and I'll see you on the next spotlight.